Citizens Forum. Before we start, I'd like to thank again our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes it all happen. Our guest in this segment is Scott Attrill. Scott lives in Esquimalt, and he's running for the mayoralty of Esquimalt. So Scott, maybe you just want to introduce yourself and tell us why.
Sure. Hi, Jack. My name is Scott Attrill. I'm the owner of Floyd's Hairstyling for Men in Esquimalt and have been for the last 15 years. I've been self-employed for 30 years. I know Esquimalt very well. I grew up in Esquimalt. I graduated out of Esquimalt High in 1981. It's been a home to me for a very long time, for 30 years. I have lived in other parts of the city, but a lot of it has been in Esquimalt. I've seen no growth in Esquimalt, none whatsoever. I've seen a lot of fighting, a lot of wasted monies. I've seen the mayor of Esquimalt arguing about what police service should be utilized. I've seen not really any development or any kind of business core developed in Esquimalt. It's always been the same. I'd like to see that changed. I'm seeing a lot of, in Esquimalt and all over the city, I'm seeing wasted monies with flower pots and bike lanes. And the idea of traffic calming, where we would, the CRD has a plan, it's called the Cycling and Pedestrian Master Plan. I'm sure you've hit on this, right?
I don't really know anything about it.
Oh, the Cycling and Pedestrian Master Plan is basically it's the basis of how they get the money for traffic calming. So the green tax that you have on the pumps is collected at the pumps and held by the federal government. The municipalities then put in for a grant, and the grant has to have three things. They have to reduce lanes of traffic, they have to increase green spaces, and they have to increase bike lanes. That's why you're seeing this continuation of all these different things going on all over the city, but they all look the same. The key is, it's like social engineering. It's trying to get people out of their cars and into bikes, which is fine, but you can't put them on the roads. Okay, so when the municipality puts the grant in, it goes to the CRD dots the I's, crosses the T's, and then it goes to the University, Union of British Columbia municipality. It's quite a mouthful. That's why people get bored of politics, right? What happens after that is they award the money to the municipality, given that they've done all three of these things in their project. And that money is then sent from the federal government to the municipalities. It says 100% federally funded. Well, it's a lie. The people that funded it are the people in their cars, and every time they buy gas, they pay the tax. It gives them more money to spend in this direction, which gives you less lanes of traffic.
Now, I used to be a bike driver, a bike rider. I don't anymore. I had an accident. But, I mean, I'm happy, I think, to have what they call traffic calming and less lanes of traffic. I mean, that's my, just somebody says that, I think, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are, because ICBC has people lining up out the door to get their licenses, and they're not getting licenses to drive bikes.
So there's going to be, you're saying there's going to be more traffic, so we have to have more roads.
And even if we go and say, well, this is a green initiative, and we want to reduce our carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when they perfect the electric car? Now you're having all these cars stuck in minimal amounts of lanes. For what purpose? And people stuck waiting to get home. For what purpose? The Esquimalt in particular is a jackpot, because you have two of the largest employers in a 1 kilometer area,
Right.
D&D and Shipyard, some 8,000 to 10,000 people Monday to Friday. You take away lanes in that area right between the base and Shipyard, it's not only going to increase the amount of congestion, it's also going to create a problem for emergency services. You think about when that fishing ship hit the Winnipeg, one day before the Protector was in the place that the Winnipeg was. That's a single-hulled ship, and it was holding 1.2 million liters of diesel at the time. If it punctured the tanks, we would have an environmental disaster at the very least. You have less lanes. You can't get the men and the women of the mind to get on site to contain the emergency as quickly as possible. You can't get people evacuated out of the area. Remember the Russian freighter when that went up? How many police, how many fire departments came to get people out of their houses? You reduce lanes in that area, it is going to end in a disaster.
Okay. You wanted to talk about your vision for Esquimalt, so I guess this is one part of it.
One part is to keep Esquimalt free flowing, to let people come and go as they please. The second part is to get all the people that work in Esquimalt, or a great percentage of them, to call Esquimalt their home. And what I want to do in that direction is I want to eliminate the antiquated height restrictions in building. Right now we just had 2 towers, 10 stories tall, canceled. They were denied the building permit. And the reason for that is unknown. They just were denied it. I think it's because the people down in that area, and what we're going to talk about, the NIMBYs, right? The people down in that area didn't want it because the shadow from the building was going to go across the marina, and that's where Mayor Barbara Desjardins has most of her support, or a great many voters from that area. If they approved it, she would probably lose a great deal of the support for her in that area.
But if people don't want it, I mean, I wish they would do that in Victoria. When people don't want something, don't do it, because they just kind of ram it down our throats.
Well, in Esquimalt in particular, the only place we can go, we can't build out, so we
That's
can only
true.
build up, right? And with the infrastructure costs being so high for even just like the Johnson Street Bridge, not that that's Esquimalt's problem, but it is Victoria's problem. When the infrastructure costs go so high, it has to be shared by the number of houses, the number of tax-paying houses. And if you don't have that number going up, then the taxes keep going up and up and up, and pretty soon people can't afford their own homes.
How do you think people feel in general in Esquimalt about going up? Are people like the idea, or do people like Esquimalt more the way it is now?
18% of Esquimalt's population voted in the last election. When I go to a town council meeting, there might be 7 to 5, 10 people in there, maybe. The mayor says it's a bumper crowd, there's 15 people there. The largest crowd I ever saw was when they were trying to get that permit passed for the 10-story building 2 tower.
Right.
And it should have passed. It fit into the city zoning proposals. It should have passed, but it was just wrong timing. The guy shouldn't have brought it up when he did. He should have waited till after the election. Right? What I see is selling the ocean views and the mountain views, putting condos up as high as 25 stories like they do in the Songhees, all along where the water is. Maybe not where the homes are already located, because of course they have vested interests there, but there are pockets of Esquimalt that are downtrodden. They need to be replaced and needs to be ripped up. Constance Avenue is a great example. It's right behind the base. There's going to be very little people that are going to be upset with a big building going there. It's not going to block anyone's view. And anyone that buys in that area is going to have the sun rising in the morning and the sun setting at night over the mountains. It's beautiful.
That's true. You know, it's, I mean, how do we put additional housing into our towns and cities without hopefully disturbing other people too much? I mean, and there are ways to do it. I mean, there are places where I guess it can be built with, I don't know that part of Esquimalt, but, you know, if people want it, I'm for it.
Yeah, the most complaining I heard about that building, that 10 stories, 2 towers, was it was going to take away their sun.
Well, that's important.
Well, it is,
for
but it's
people.
not gone the whole day.
Yeah.
The sun moves.
You wanted to talk about the CRD's sewage treatment plan.
Yeah, we can touch on that. 9 years ago, a good friend of mine and colleague, Keith Martin, said this is a boondoggle.
And he was the member of parliament.
Yeah, I was an old reformer. I was the guy banging on the doors. We didn't have social media then. I got so many doors slammed on me, I can't even count. But the septic treatment plant and the CRD, Keith Martin said it 9 years ago, this is not necessary. The ocean takes care of it fine. The University of Victoria and the University of Washington both stated categorically that we're not doing any damage to the ocean. These are the intellects. And the people that are elected into the CRD have refused to listen to them. I don't know why.
Well, my own feeling is it's a lot of money going from public hands into private hands.
Sure.
So I guess that's why.
Well, Stantec. That's one word answer. Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm very, very, very disappointed in the politicians of this region who have been involved in that, just because they won't even listen when people say, no, we don't want it. They say, well, we're going to make you want it.
Well, when the intellectuals say, no, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Yet the federal government says you have to do it.
Yes.
And then the provincial government backs up and says, we're going to give you some money too.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, these people that we don't know start lining up at the doors looking for that money's. Now, Barbara Desjardins started out first saying what I'm saying. Rely on science. If science says it's not required, don't do it. Now she wants to make her own septic treatment plant underground next to City Hall under a 12-story building. Wrong plan, wrong idea. You don't put a septic treatment plant downtown. You got restaurants, you got all kinds of businesses in that area. There's even a residential area behind where she wants to put it. There's a great big huge daycare off to the other side that has about 150 children. You have an earthquake and that thing ruptures.
So you stand by the idea that we may very well not have to do anything at all.
We should not do anything.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be my first choice too, because that seems to be what the science is saying.
The day that science changes and says we are doing irreparable damage to the ocean,
right,
then my opinion will change. Yeah. When we push things into the ocean, whether it's our waste, the only thing we have to make sure is we don't throw pharmaceuticals, paints, oils,
yes,
into the ocean.
Yes.
And that's collection at source.
Yes.
All right.
You wanted to talk about building permits and how that
yes.
takes place.
You know, the Legion, I've been following this for a long time. I've had my business in Esquimalt for 15 years. I've been watching this Legion struggle to get its building permit.
And the Legion wants to build a fairly tall
the first design
residential building
was over the limit that Esquimalt allowed. That was part of the problem. But it's been 11 years.
Since the first application went
11 years, and Mayor Barbara Desjardins was as a councillor or as a mayor for 9 of those 11 years. You think a building permit should take 11 years? Imagine the building costs, how they went up in 11 years.
So why, I mean, I'm sure other buildings have been built in Esquimalt during that time. Is it that particular thing is?
There have been some built, but not many.
So you'd just like to see more construction, residential construction in Esquimalt?
I'm more in the lines of what Stu did out in Langford, is make the process efficient, but quick. Get the jobs going, get people working, get the building going, and then have the development work around that. You have more people living in a square area, then you have more opportunity for restaurants, more opportunities for barbershops, more opportunities for almost every kind of business. Right now, the Esquimalt core is just eroding.
I'm sorry, right now?
The Esquimalt core is just eroding. You go down there, it looks like the ghetto.
Yeah. How about regional CRD issues? You mentioned the cycling and pedestrian master plan, but you wanted to talk a bit about Admiral's Road.
Yeah, well, Admiral's Road, we have a cycling road going behind. It's the E&N Trail. It goes behind the building where I work. Okay. It's 10 feet wide. It goes from Esquimalt Road where the railway tracks are, down past my building and ends at the Songhees Nation. Because the CRD, in their infinite wisdom, didn't talk with the Songhees Nation about this bike path. So it goes literally 10 feet wide, beautifully paved, all the way down, and it stops and it's gravel. And then it picks up on the other side in View Royal. They don't have the permission of the Songhees to go through their land. They didn't get it before they built these two parts of the trail. The CRD keeps making mistakes, like it's a $17 million purchase in Viewfield Road. Are you kidding me? That's just subject to the approval of this area being utilized for this purpose. And Mayor Barbara Desjardins should have been yelling it out loud. She should have been screaming no. She could go into the newspapers and say, this is what they're going to do. They're going to buy that property up. I met some people that were actually working in the building at the time when the CRD members came in, and the owner played them like a fiddle. And they just gave up $17 million of our tax-paying money for something that's never was going to be able to be utilized for said purpose.
Yeah, how, is there a better way of doing it? I mean, besides the politicians themselves being better trained and doing a better job for us?
Well, are they better trained or are they corrupt? That's the question. I mean, if there's corruption involved, which in the case of the septic treatment plant, I believe there is, if you're not listening to science and science is screaming out loud, don't do it. It's not necessary. And somebody says, still, we need to do it. And there's a pile of money at the end of the rainbow. I bet you that there's some influence. I'm not saying any names on the CRD. I'm just saying that when it comes to being pushed more and more, it becomes more and more obvious that something's on.
Yeah, something is definitely wrong. Scott, we've only got 1 minute left. Scott Attrill running for the mayoralty in Esquimalt. Is there any other issue you'd like to touch on, the police or just Esquimalt in general?
I think the Esquimalt people need to be engaged. I think the town council meetings should be taped. I think there should be less in-camera meetings. I think that people should go to their meetings. It's always held at 7 o'clock. And sometimes we're just too busy with our lives to go. So we should be able to see what's going on a website. It should be recorded and
Could even be live streamed.
well, sure it could, if they have the time. But if it's recorded, then they can play it back whenever they want. But the infrastructures that you're going to pay for in the near future are going to oversee the monies you're going to be available out of your own pocket for taxes. It's going to get too expensive. You're going to have more people live in the area. You're going to have development to be able to afford what's coming down the pipe in the near future.
City elections are coming up in November, only a few months away, so keep all of this in mind. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
And thanks for watching Citizens Forum.